There seems to be no sign of
offensive.
Anywhere.
Hello.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. And as you saw from the intro to this video, the story remains the same. No offense anywhere to be found, and the Red Sox take another brutal series loss to the Los Angeles Angels, which is surprising because they started out this series doing super well. I thought maybe the tides had turned. They were back at Fenway. They were doing their thing. Nope, they lost in horrible fashion to the Angels twice, and now they've only won one series still this year. Nothing's really changing, and I think we're at the point now where it's time to ask whether or not this team can still be competitive in 2022. I'm not talking about leading the division. I'm not talking about being a juggernaut in the AL East or in the AL period. I'm talking about simply competing in this division for a playoff spot, or just competing in general to enjoy watching a baseball game. Because right now, I can't even say that the last series was the hardest to watch because it was just simply unwatchable. So what we're going to do today is, unfortunately, we're going to go through the entire Angels series. We're going to talk about the bad. We're going to talk about the ugly. I'm going to mention some good because there was some good in this series, but there was certainly more bad and ugly. And we're going to talk about whether or not this team can stay competitive in this division. But before I get into that, do me a favor. If you are new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. So if you want to be miserable with someone, you want to be miserable with a community, this is the spot for you. Also, make sure you guys are hitting that like button as well. If you are subscribed or newly subscribed, this is the best way to help this channel out, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. I want to start with the rotation in this series because if there's one thing that is still giving me hope for the Red Sox to be competitive, it's starting pitching. We saw Wacha, we saw Whitlock, and we saw Hill in this series. Wacha got the ball in game 1 and continues to shove it. He went 5 1/3, only allowing 3 hits and no runs. And at this point in the season, if you are out on Michael Wacha still, I am convinced that you are either just checking box scores and not watching the game, or you have some vendetta against Chaim Bloom. Whitlock got the ball in game 2, and we saw a little bit of humanity in Garrett Whitlock this start, although at the same time, he was perfect through 4 innings. He was striking out 2 of the most prolific power hitters of this generation and making those guys look silly. So he's still a super dominant pitcher, but we saw a mistake pitch from Garrett Whitlock for probably the first time this entire year. He still looks really good, and he made the Angels look silly for 5 innings. To finish out the series, we saw Rich Hill, and this is another guy that if you are still out on Rich Hill at this point, I'm convinced you're looking at box scores and not watching games, or you have that vendetta against Chaim Bloom that I mentioned with Wacha, because Rich Hill continues to be a bright spot in this rotation. He has gone now 14 consecutive innings without allowing a run. He went 5 innings in the game to end the series, and he didn't give up a single run again. The starting pitching, in my opinion, is far from the issue. They have done everything in their power to keep the Red Sox in this game, and they continue to keep doing that. If the Red Sox offense can get going at some point this year and this pitching stays where it is, this could be a genuinely competitive team. And even if the pitching comes down to earth a little bit and the offense gets going a lot of bit, this is still a super competitive team. Every expected statistic points towards this pitching staff kind of staying where it is throughout the entire year, which is good news for us. Whether or not the offense can get going is a different story. Moving on to the bullpen, they were great in game 1. Definitely a different story from the rotation, but they were good in game 1. Sawamura ended up striking out Shohei Ohtani to end the game, and that was kind of cool. 2 players from the same country kind of go at it, and the Red Sox coming out on top, especially when it's a guy like Ohtani. Austin Davis, Matt Strahm, and Hansel Robles continue to have fairly good outings. Yeah, Hansel Robles was a little bit shaky in that 9th inning, but he was still getting guys out. And Brazier, to his credit, is having good outings as well. He came back down to earth a little bit. He stopped being so ridiculously terrible coming into games with runners on base. So good for Brazier for doing his thing. I'm not going to get too into the rest of the bullpen and the problems with them. Diekman, Barnes, obviously terrible. Sawamura had a terrible outing, but I did an entire video on how we could possibly fix this bullpen. So if you want more information on the bullpen, I will have that link in the description. I will also have it at the end of the video for you guys to click on if you're interested in how I think we can fix this bullpen, because right now That's our biggest problem. Let's all be honest here. We probably should have won 2 out of 3, and that's just the same story that we have had throughout the entire year. We should have taken 2 out of 3. We should have swept. We should have done this. We should have done that. And it's mostly because we can't hold leads late into games. The bullpen is by far our biggest issue right now. I understand the bats aren't hot, but when you put up 4 runs and you are in a close game, because there's going to be close games throughout this season, you have to be able to shut that down. Again, if you want more information on that, link will be in the description. Let's move on and talk about the offense for this Red Sox team. Offensively, our core players continue to be the entirety of our offense. Rafael Devers had an absolute bomb in game 1. That ball was hit 437 feet, I think. It was an absolute tank to dead center field. JD Martinez had a home run in game 1 as well, and he continues to swing the bat really, really well. He also had a double in the last game of the series off of Shohei. He had a couple of hits throughout the series as well, and he continues to be a key and important part of this lineup. I'm real nervous to see if we aren't competitive at the deadline to see JD Martinez get shipped out, because I love seeing him in that 5 spot or 4 spot, wherever he is in this lineup. He helps this team immensely. Speaking of helping this team, Xander Bogaerts continues to swing a pretty hot bat. He had a couple hits in this series, including a home run in game 2 that was absolutely tanked. He flipped the bat. He was ready. That should have been the game winner. Again, bullpen lets it up. Trevor Story had one singular good game in this series where he had 2 doubles and 3 RBIs, but for the rest of the series, he was absolutely nowhere to be found. Golden sombrero for him, 4 strikeouts against Shohei Ohtani, 0 for 3 in this first game, and I think we're at the point now with Trevor's story where we can give him all the slack he deserved, and now we're past that. We're past the time for slacking. We're past the time for, oh, we had a tough off season and a shortened spring training. You had a month to figure this out at this point. You should be hitting the ball better. Trevor's story is starting to concern me 100%. As for the bottom half of this order, I have to give credit where credit's due. All 3 RBIs from Trevor Story in game 2 came from the bottom half of the order getting on, and they did their job in this series, at least in game 2. Especially Jackie Bradley Jr., who had a couple of doubles in this series and a few hits. He's been hitting the ball extremely well. He kind of beat up on Shohei Ohtani a little bit, which was cool to see. So shout out to Jackie Bradley doing his thing. The bottom half of this order is not the problem right now. I think the problem in general is just Red Sox still not being able to put runners across the plate, and that's going to be the problem going forward. If the Red Sox want to stay competitive in this division, and again, I'm not talking about winning the division here. I'm talking about putting together good baseball to put themselves in a conversation for a playoff spot. Whether or not they make the playoffs is another story, but being able to be in that conversation for a playoff spot right now, I think is the Red Sox main goal. And I don't know if they're going to get there. I think to get there, they're going to need to make tweaks to this bullpen. They're going to need to make tweaks to this lineup. They're going to need to do things that they haven't done so far this season, which is not rely on guys getting it together. I think up until this point, the Red Sox have just assumed that guys will get going and guys in certain positions will steady out and it'll be fine, and that's clearly not happening. Changes need to be made. Changes need to be made to the bench personnel. Changes need to be made to first base, possibly even the catcher position. Changes need to be made to the bullpen, and if these changes are not made, the Red Sox will not be competitive this year. I still have hope, and I think you guys should too. There are really good parts of this team. It's like that commercial, that State Farm commercial that ran, I don't know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, where she's sitting in a boutique of some sort and it's a woman and there's a dollar being dangled in front of her head. And every time she goes for the dollar, it gets pulled away from her. And the guy sits there and he goes, oh, gotta be quicker than that.
Oh, you almost had it. You gotta be quicker than that.
That's what it feels like to be a Red Sox fan. That's what it feels like to be on the Red Sox right now. You know the greatness is right in front of you. You know that you can win these games and the wins are staring you in the face, but every time you go to grab it, it disappears. That needs to change going forward or this team will not be competitive. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Are you in full panic, tear down this team, let's rebuild mode? Are you still holding out hope that this season gets turned around? Let me know all your thoughts down below. I'm ready to fight for my life in the comments of saying that there is still hope for this Red Sox team. So let me know what your thoughts are down below. As always, if you've made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you are miserable with this Red Sox team, we all are too. You might as well be miserable with us. Also, make sure that you guys are hitting that like button as well if you are newly subscribed or subscribed. Again, it is the best way to help this channel out, and it would mean a whole lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the next one.